first book on the list for this week in reviews. We talked about it when it was announced. It has finally come out. Actually, all three of the books that we're going to be talking about today in reviews, we talked about when they were initially announced. So, all three are number ones, which is very interesting. I get the feeling, because again, this is a relatively new segment, get the feeling we're going to be doing a lot of number ones and probably not a whole lot beyond those unless it's a really, really good number one. But first on the list this week, as I birdwalk some more, is Naomi. This is the second book in the Wonder Comics line that Brian Michael Bendis started over on DC just last week. Was it last week? Yeah, only just last week, with the Young Justice book that we talked about last week. So this, I got this for two reasons. First is because we talked about it. I'm still very interested because Brian Michael Bendis, but we talked about it when it was announced, and I want to see, second, what the big mystery is, because this is supposed to be affecting the entire DC universe. Even though it's a different imprint, everything that happens in Wonder Comics is going to be canon in the primary universe. What to say about this book? First, let's start with what's amazing about this book. The art in this, what's the guy's name? Jamal Campbell does incredible art. This I can't even. Let's jump over to the other camera real quick. So, this is the first page. This is what we get, and it's nothing really knock your socks off on the very first page, but it is solid. There's a definite style here. We got the hard outlines, and we got you're gonna see a lot of this pulpy kind of background. The layout for these, because we get this page a couple of times, the layout for this is interesting. These are quasi interviews. Don't know exactly if it's the news people are talking to them, or if this is just them recounting the story to their friends. But then you turn the page, and this is the most striking thing we're going to be looking at all freaking week. This is the coolest freaking splash. Oh my god. We've swapped the hard black outline for this hard white, and just everything in this, your eyes are drawn exactly where they need to go. They're right to the action, but there's still all of the detail around here, and just it's so good. And you can follow this. This is laid out very, very well. Again, Campbell is just killing it. So, and it's even more, and I can't even say how much I love this art. I know it's very probable that what he's done is rendered everything and then drawn over the 3D renders. I am totally okay with it in here because this all feels supernatural. The one panel, there might be more, but there's only one panel in this entire book that I had any sort of issue with, and it's this one here, because the motion seems awkward. She's obviously running, because that's why we have the motion blur on the frame, but like she looks like she's teetering, and I don't know, it just seems super freaking awkward. Which is very much out of place in the rest of this book, because everything else is so well balanced. This whole page, the layout itself, again, kind of boring. That will factor into the rating, but just the framing inside of the individual frame, because all four of these are the same frame, right? So the framing, we have the three people that we care about, Naomi and her two friends, and they're obviously in the middle of a group, but instead of making the whole group exactly the same kind of art, they're faded into the background with the coloring, and just freaking brilliant. The writing in this, Bendis is super expositional, and it really shows when Naomi's hanging out with her friends, and that kind of gets to be a little taxing to read. But when you're looking at artwork like this, like here, when you're looking at stuff like that's just it makes up for the overly heavy exposition. And then again, we get this is Naomi interrogating these people, not them recounting anything. It's really difficult to see who's the big mystery. She's looking to see if any supers have visited her little town before, because that's what this whole thing was at the beginning. It's the first time Superman's ever done anything outside of Metropolis, which is untrue. But that's the mythology that they're inserting, I guess, into this story. And again, we get more of the pulpy kind of backgrounds. And see, there doesn't have to be a whole lot going on in the background for it to look good. This is super stylized, more of the pulpy stuff. And even when we're here with her friends, I don't know how well that's translating in the screen. Right here, we get even more of that pulpy texture, and I really think that was a really cool addition. So, this guy, this is the intrigue of this issue. Is this guy apparently knows something, and we get to learn on the last page, I'm not going to go all the way to the end, but we get to learn on the last page that he does actually know something, but we don't know what it is, and there's a couple of hints dropped earlier in the story about why that matters. So basically, there's a big secret in this town, and Naomi is adopted. Is the implication? We don't know that for 100%, but that's the implication. Is that Naomi is adopted, much like Superman. Actually, no, they do say it explicitly when she's talking to her therapist. In this scene, she's talking about how people forget that Superman's adopted, and that's one of the other mythology issues that I have with this. Is people don't know Superman's secret identity, so how would they know that he's adopted? That's wrong. that's a glaring issue. So yeah, aside from the major story wrecking mythology issue, this is super solid. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's get into the scores so I can finish gushing. So, Naomi number 1, general score is a 90 out of 100. The biggest reason we went that high is, even with the exposition, it doesn't, like, it gets a little taxing because it's like, all right, they're explaining, but it's the first issue, so you kind of have to give them a little bit of leeway. It's the first issue ever with this character at all, so again, you kind of have to give them a little bit of leeway, but the art is so superb that really brought the general score up. Just the layouts, even though the panel layouts weren't the best, again, that's why we brought it down. The panel layouts weren't fantastic, but the panels themselves, what's happening inside that frame, every one of those, except for the one that we talked about, that one exception, I feel like every one of those tells you exactly what you need to know, and does it in such a way that it doesn't pull you out of it. There's no glaring open spaces. There's no obvious 3D renders. None of the pitfalls that most of the other big Marvel books even are falling into. None of those apply. And so that definitely salvaged the general score because, again, it's a first issue and we get a lot of exposition. So yeah, general score 90 out of 100. Mythology, I could have misread or misunderstood the intention behind that. There is the possibility that they're talking metaphorically, because everybody knows that Superman is an alien, so he was adopted by the people he's protecting. But the way it was phrased doesn't imply that. The way it was phrased implies that this therapist knows that Superman was adopted by the Kents. Maybe not the Kents specifically, but was adopted by a couple and was raised that way. So that's not the mythology. I don't know that that's ever been the mythology. Even in Secret Origins, that weird alternate universe thing, that wasn't the mythology there either. So I don't know what Bendis is doing, why that was the thing. And then also, but that's story, so we'll get into that in a minute. Anyway, Mythology is a 77 out of 100 because that is a glaring issue. Aside from that, we're creating a new mythology. Because that's not part of the created mythology, because that deals directly with Superman. So we're setting up a new mythology for Naomi, though, and that's kind of why I didn't go harsher on the mythology score with that crazy issue, because the focus of this book is not going to be Superman. The focus of this book is going to be Naomi, and it wasn't the best way to set up a new mythology, but it also has you interested enough to read more. So that bodes well for the book. So again, 77 out of 100 for Mythology. Next up is Story, and I really dug the story, though I don't want Bendis to fall into the Tom King realm of thinking, in that if I keep secrets the whole time and don't give my audience anything to figure it out, if I just sit on everything and then right at the end I share all of the twists all at once, then they're going to think I'm great. Bendis is already a pretty great author. I'm not one of those that dislikes Brian Michael Bendis. That being said, I know he can write a better mystery. So, and I also kind of felt like the mystery elements, while it was throughout, it was mostly in the last few pages, is where we really got clued into why Naomi cares about this mystery, and the intrigue of the fact that apparently something happened in this town, and nobody wants to talk about it except for that big muscle guy at the garage. I wanted just a little bit more of a clue as to what the big muscle guy at the garage knew. I wanted a little bit more of a clue as to why this really mattered to Naomi. We didn't really get either of those, so we're looking at an 85 out of 100 in Story. Just Bendis is better than that. That's And then Enjoyability is the last score. And this, remember, is the subjective end of the spectrum. And subjectively, this was a pretty solid book. The one thing really took me out of it. The rest of it was me wanting more. So that's a good thing. That's always a good thing. 88 out of 100 for Enjoyability. I really feel like number ones, especially when it's a brand new story, when it's especially a brand new character, number ones are always doomed to be pretty bland. This was not much of an exception, aside from the fantastic art, so we couldn't really give it an A, but it was very, very close. So 88 out of 100 for Enjoyability. But before we do any of this stuff, before we click that box or go to that website or whatever, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.